Hey everyone, welcome to a quick interview with Grant Brechney. He'll be fighting at the Urban Fight Night 23, which will be in Hurstville. Grant, firstly, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And how is your training going for the fight coming up?
It's been a good, clean camp. Um, I've been
So obviously, growing up, there's lots of sports in Australia. What drew you to MMA in particular?
definitely my dad. The gym in which I train is the Blue Mountains Martial Arts Centre, which is headed by Chris Trace. And my dad was a black belt under Chris, and growing up, we lived just sort of down the road from the gym. And my dad would go down there all the time. And back then, I was probably about 4 years old and loved the thought of martial arts and going and training, but I just had like zero attention span and all that kind of thing. So I was never serious about it until I got to high school. My dad stopped competing after several injuries and all that kind of stuff, and he eventually moved to Victoria for a while and all that kind of thing. And I started training with a different group of people doing short injury karate that was under Scott Brown, and I still train with them. But then when I decided I wanted to focus on cage fighting, I went back to Chris and I said, I want to come back and train seriously. And he took me in, and here we are.
Quite a journey. I know obviously you've had some amateur fights, and I think, is this your third pro fight?
This is my third pro, yeah.
Awesome. So obviously it's going well for you so far. I noticed over the past few years, you've had a couple of injuries that have came up. How have you managed to persevere through the injuries to get to the point where you're only less than 2 weeks away from your next fight?
Yeah, man, the hardest thing for me competing has always been my body. Like, I feel like my mind is a lot more gung-ho than my body has the ability to keep up with me. But, I'm an exercise scientist by profession. I'm doing a PhD by research as well. So I know how to look after my body when it needs to recover, when I'm ready to train. Obviously, I need to balance that with my own mental state all the time as well. Sometimes there's periods where you don't want to train, and sometimes there's periods where you want to train, but your body needs that recovery. But like for the most part, I think I've been able to get to a point where, so the biggest test for me, whether my body's ready, is when I do my rounds with my coach train. He and I go pretty hard together, and if I'm surviving those rounds, then I know that I'm ready to fight. So,
It's quite a tough challenge to get back from an injury. Any injury can be tough depending on how severe it is. So obviously, fair play to you, and all credit to you for getting back in the cage in 2 weeks. It must be quite a journey. My last question for you is, if there's anyone that you know that would want to start a martial art, what advice would you give them in terms of starting in general?
I really think that the reason why most people walk through the door of martial arts center is because they want a little bit more confidence in their ability to defend themselves. Maybe they want, like, there's some secondary objectives, like it might be a good place for me to socialize and all that kind of thing, get fit and all that kind of stuff. But if the primary reason you walk through the door of a martial arts center is for self-defense, then I try to tell people to always, throughout their journey, stay true to that objective. So if it doesn't take long when you're training martial arts to get caught up in the whole competition scene, but say if you walk into a Taekwondo dojo, no one walks into that dojo to become the next bloody ITF champion, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm coming here to sort of learn how to be better. And so if you are looking for self-defense, then the one thing I would say to people is not all martial arts are created equal. You need to do your research, speak to people who have done martial arts and multiple disciplines. And for me, again, I'm an exercise scientist. I approach everything I do with a very scientific kind of mindset, right? So I really like to question everything. I'm not ever going to take something for granted just because the bloke up the front of the class tells me that this is going to work. So I like to test it, you know what I mean? I'll put it through its paces with different people. And, that's not to say that if there's a really fancy looking move, that if you drill it, you can't make it work. But also you need to think about, how realistic is this going to be? How do I want to spend my time training in the martial arts and all that kind of thing? But, you know, just for a really easy take-home message for people, I think the three things that you really need to have are comprehensive striking. So punching, kicking, as I say, my main foundation is karate, but Muay Thai is fantastic. Anything where you're using your elbows, your knees, your shins, your hands, doing everything, coming at them from all angles, fantastic footwork. You need to have wrestling. Freestyle wrestling is my favorite sort of martial art for transitioning. Yeah. So if you want to be controlling where a fight goes, wrestling is what's going to give that to you. You know, if you don't want to be taken down, you need to have wrestling. If you want to take somebody down, you need to have wrestling.
Yeah.
Then when it does hit the ground, you absolutely 100% need Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time firstly from today. I also really appreciate you coming on. I know obviously the fight's 2 weeks away. I personally have got tickets to it. I can't wait to see it. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.